Revenge with Kayla. Floor 42 smelled like lemon polish and recycled air. The conference room lights hummed like they were paid to keep secrets. I've spent 15 years translating chaos into clean signatures. Today was a 9-figure renewal with a keyman clause and a client who hated surprises. My deck was the map. My inbox was the early warning system. Then the door slammed. New boss, new smile, freshly printed. He didn't sit. He pointed at the empty chair beside me. "This is Trent," he said. "You'll train him to do your job." Trent shook my hand like it was a networking event. Soft grip, eager eyes, the kind of confidence that comes from never having to be right in public. My boss didn't even sit. "Kayla will walk you through the process," he said. "Shadow her. Take notes. We need you ramped by end of week." Process. That word makes people think of checklists and flowcharts and pastel boxes. In my world, process is a living thing. It has moods. It has grudges. It has choke points that only show themselves when the clock is loud and the stakes are expensive. By the time most people were pretending to read newsletters, I had 3 tabs open: the term sheet, the renewal red lines, and a compliance tracker that looked like a graveyard. My title sounded boring on paper. In reality, I was the woman between minor hiccup and 9-figure embarrassment. Legal pinged me about the keyman clause. Finance asked for a quick forecast. Client team dropped an urgent alignment invite with no agenda, like that wasn't a threat. This is what I actually did all day. I routed pressure. I took panic from the top floor and turned it into polite emails that didn't light anyone on fire. I ran handoffs like air traffic control. Who speaks to whom, in what order, with what attachment, and what not to put in writing because discovery is forever. There were escalation paths nobody wrote down. The "don't loop in HR unless you want a week of meetings" path. The "if procurement is CC'd, the deal slows by 30% path. The "if you type the word breach, legal appears like a demon" path. Trent watched me like I was doing card tricks. "So you just send emails?" he asked, genuinely curious. I smiled without warmth. "I prevent lawsuits," I said, and kept typing. We prepped in a glass room. Everyone looked calm because that's what expensive people do. Under the table, knees bounced. On the screen, the renewal timeline was a straight line. In real life, it was a labyrinth with tripwires. "Who owns the client narrative?" I asked. Silence. Then a VP offered, "We all do?" "Wrong," I said. "One voice, one story. Or they smell fear." That's the part you can't train from a PDF. The nuance, the temperature of a room, the moment you let someone else talk, and the moment you cut them off before they volunteer a concession just to feel helpful. Right on schedule, the client's general counsel called. His voice was friendly. His questions were knives. "Kayla, just thinking out loud," he said, "if your key person is transitioning, how do we protect continuity?" I saw Trent in the reflection, scribbling like he'd discovered fire. "Continuity is guaranteed," I said, smooth as mahogany. "We have redundancy." Redundancy. They think it means 2 people. It means 1 person plus 1 person who knows where the bodies are buried. My desk wasn't tidy. It was controlled chaos. Sticky notes that said, "Don't say this," a legal pad with call times, a folder labeled appendix that wasn't files so much as landmines, exceptions, side letters, quiet promises made in hallways and sealed with handshakes. Trent kept asking for the document that explained my job. There wasn't one. There was me. There was my brain. There was the muscle memory of 1,000 near disasters I stopped before anyone could name them. By lunch, red lines came back, legal escalated, and my boss texted, "Make it go away." I typed 3 sentences. I moved 1 meeting. I made 1 call to someone who still owed me a favor. The problem dissolved like sugar in hot coffee. Trent blinked. "How did you do that?" I didn't look up. "I know where the pressure valves are," I said. And that's the truth they never put in the onboarding deck. Most companies aren't run on policy. They're run on people who know which door sticks, which signature matters, and which ego will detonate if you use the wrong subject line. Nothing broke because I was there. By 2:17 p.m., my calendar looked like a crime scene. A quick touch base from my boss. A people update from HR. A sync with Trent. 3 invites, no agendas. That's how they do it now. They don't fire you, they align. The room they picked was smaller than the boardroom, but it smelled the same. Lemon polish over something metallic, like fear that had been scrubbed and left to dry. HR was already there. Dana. Perfect blowout, soft cardigan, the kind of smile you rehearse so your eyes never have to join. My boss sat beside her, angled toward the door like he might need to leave quickly. This morning he was a commander. Now he was a man about to read from a script. "Kayla," he said too warmly, "thanks for making the time." I placed my notebook on the table and clicked my pen. Small sounds get loud when someone is about to pretend your life is a spreadsheet. Dana folded her hands. "This is a confidential conversation," she said. "We want to discuss organizational changes." Organizational changes. Translation: your loyalty has an expiration date. I nodded once. Not agreement, permission. "Okay," I said. My boss cleared his throat. "The company is moving in a new direction," he began. New direction. It's always a direction, never a person, never an ego. Dana slid a folder across the table like she was offering me dessert. "Based on current business needs," she said, "we're eliminating your role." Eliminating. Like I was a glitch. Like I wasn't the reason nothing broke. I kept my face still. Inside, I counted tells. Dana didn't say performance. My boss didn't say budget. Nobody said thank you. So it wasn't money. It was control. "My role is tied to the renewal," I said. "There's a key man clause." My boss's eyes flicked to Dana. That tiny look that says, "Please be the villain for me." Dana's smile widened. "We've reviewed contractual considerations," she said. "Legal is comfortable with our position." Legal is comfortable. That's code for legal didn't stop us fast enough. "And the timing?" I asked. 48 hours before client sign-off? My boss lifted his hands, palms out, like I was being emotional instead of accurate. "It's not personal," he said. "It's a strategic restructure." Strategic. Sure. Nothing says strategy like cutting your own parachute mid-flight. Dana leaned in. "We want to make this transition as smooth as possible." Transition. A soft word for a hard thing. She tapped the folder. "You'll receive severance contingent upon signing a standard release." 2 months. No bonus. A non-disparagement clause dressed up as professionalism. And the line they actually cared about. Knowledge transfer obligations. I looked up. "You're requiring me to train Trent as part of severance?" Dana didn't blink. "We're asking you to support continuity." Asking. With consequences. My boss lowered his voice like he was doing me a favor. "Trent has a strong background," he said. "Fresh perspective." Fresh. Like 15 years of scar tissue was a branding issue. I watched him swallow. "You hired him before this meeting," I said. It wasn't a question. Dana moved quickly. "We made a proactive decision to reduce disruption." Proactive. You can rename anything if you say it with confidence. "And the reason?" I asked. Officially. Dana glanced at her notes, then looked up with that practiced sympathy. "We've had concerns about cultural fit," she said. Cultural fit. The corporate equivalent of, "We don't like how you don't flinch." My boss added, "You've been rigid, resistant to change." I almost laughed. I was the one who kept their chaos from becoming headlines. "You mean I don't flatter people," I said softly. "I don't let them promise what we can't deliver." Dana's voice stayed smooth. "This isn't the time to debate. Let's focus on next steps." Next steps. That's the part where you nod, sign, and disappear politely so they can call themselves fair. I closed the folder. "When is my last day?" Dana's smile twitched. Effective immediately. Immediate. A guillotine in a greeting card. My boss exhaled like he'd been holding his breath all day. And, he said, leaning forward, relief bright in his eyes, we'll need you to stay on through Friday to complete the handoff. He nodded toward the empty chair Trent had been warming like a placeholder. Train him. Document the process. Make sure he can run the renewal without missing anything. And then he said it. Dana slid the folder back toward me, still smiling like we were negotiating a gym membership. My boss watched my face, waiting for the crack, the plea, the bargaining, the tears that would let him leave this room feeling powerful again. I gave him none of it. I looked down at the release. I read the lines they thought mattered. Severance, non-disparagement, return of property, confidentiality. A neat little coffin with corporate fonts. Then I flipped to the last page, where the trap lived. Knowledge transfer. There it was in black ink. I would cooperate in good faith to ensure a smooth transition, which is the prettiest way anyone has ever said, build the knife that will replace you. I clicked my pen once. Dana's smile twitched. I'll need a copy, I said. Dana exhaled, relieved. Of course, she said quickly. We can email it to you. Printed, I corrected, and held her gaze. For my records. My boss blinked, confused by the absence of drama. He wasn't used to women who didn't audition for his approval. I want 2 things clarified, I continued, calm as a closing bell. 1, what specifically are my obligations for handoff? 2, whether I'm being asked to continue client-facing communications during that period. Dana gave me her, we're still kind here, voice. Kayla, we can discuss details after you sign. I nodded once. No. The word landed softly. It still hit. My boss leaned forward. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be, he said, tone gentle, content sharp. Harder. As if this was a favor. As if I should be grateful they weren't doing it in the lobby with security. I looked at him the way you look at a man holding a match near gasoline. It isn't hard, I said. It's simple. You're terminating the person responsible for continuity 2 days before a key man renewal. And you're asking me to transfer judgment to a man who thinks process is emails. Trent's name wasn't spoken in the room, but it hung there like perfume. Dana kept smiling. HR people don't get paid for truth. They get paid for tone. This is a strategic decision, she repeated, like saying it twice would make it real. I picked up my notebook and wrote a single line. Friday. End of week. Their deadline. Their fantasy. Then I drew a small box around it. My boss stared at my pen. Kayla, he said, voice dropping like he wanted a private moment in front of witnesses. We're counting on you to be professional. Professional. Another soft word for obedience. I leaned back slightly. Not defensive, just settled. Of course, I said. I'm always professional. Dana brightened, mistaking control for compliance. Great, she said. So you'll train Trent, document your processes, and... I lifted a finger, polite as a guillotine. I'll train him, I said. I'll document the process. I let the word process sit there, small and harmless. Because the truth is, the process is the easy part. The process is what you can put in a handbook. Relic from the 90s, and pretend it runs your company. The part that keeps deals alive doesn't live in a flowchart. It lives in the pauses, the phrasing, the names you don't type, the calls you make instead of sending emails, the unofficial escalation path that starts with a first name, not a department. That part wasn't in any folder. That part was me. My boss's shoulders loosened. He thought he'd won. Dana started sliding papers into a tidy stack, already mentally checking the box labeled handled. I signed nothing. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask why. I simply closed my notebook, stood up, and smoothed my blazer like we had just finished a budget review. Send the printed copy to my office, I said, and add Trent to my calendar. We'll start first thing tomorrow. My boss smiled, grateful and stupid. "Thank you," he said, like he'd just received generosity instead of a countdown. I walked out past the glass cubicles. Outside, analysts pretended not to watch. Their hands froze over keyboards. Lattes hovered midair. Everyone could feel something shift, but no one knew how to name it. In the hallway, the air felt colder. Not sad, not angry. Clear. Because if they wanted me to build my replacement, fine, I would. I would just build him exactly the way they deserved. Okay. Training started the next morning at 8 a.m. because cruelty loves an early calendar invite. Trent arrived 5 minutes early with a laptop, a branded notebook, and the kind of smile that says he thinks he's the solution to a problem he hasn't understood yet. "Morning, Kayla," he said, settling into my chair like it was already his. "I've been reviewing the materials, super excited to optimize." Optimize, of course. My office still smelled like my coffee and my control. I sat across from him with my legal pad, my pen, and a calm that looked like surrender to anyone who didn't know me. "Great," I said. "Let's start with the renewal workflow." Day 1, I gave him the map, not the weather. I pulled up the master timeline, color-coded, milestones, owners, dependencies, a beautiful lie. Trent leaned in, impressed. "Wow, this is really structured." "It has to be," I said. "Deals don't fail loudly. They fail in small, polite steps." I showed him the process doc, the official one that legal loved because it could be defended in court. Step 1, request updated red lines. Step 2, route to counsel. Step 3, consolidate edits. Step 4, schedule stakeholder alignment. Step 5, send to client. Trent nodded like he was at a TED Talk. "So it's basically just managing inputs and outputs." "Basically," I said, and watched him swallow the word like it was enough. He wanted rules. I gave him rules. I did not give him the exceptions. At 10:30, I opened a folder labeled Merger Protocols, because people like Trent trust things that sound expensive. Inside were templates, checklists, and an escalation tree. He scanned the tree. "Okay, so if there's a compliance issue, we escalate to compliance. If there's a legal issue, we escalate to legal. If there's a finance issue, finance." He looked up, pleased with himself. "This is straightforward." I smiled. "On paper." Day 2, we did client communications. I showed him the email cadence. Monday update, Wednesday checkpoint, Friday summary. Every subject line formatted the same, because consistency makes clients feel safe. "What about tone?" he asked, trying to sound sophisticated. "Neutral," I said. "Clear. No adjectives, no promises." He typed it down like it was scripture. Then I forwarded him a thread from the client's counsel with a single sentence highlighted. "Let's keep it informal." Trent grinned. "Nice, they're relaxed." "They're hunting," I corrected gently. "When they say informal, they mean off-the-record concessions." He laughed like I was joking. He didn't understand that some people smile with teeth. Day 3, we practiced the handoff meeting. I played the client, Trent played himself. Which was the problem? He launched into a confident summary with buzzwords. Synergy, alignment, proactive risk mitigation. He said "we" a lot. He said "should" even more. I let him talk for 3 minutes. Then I said, in my Marcus Sterling voice, smooth and bored, "So you're guaranteeing timing?" Trent blinked. "Well, we're aligned." I held up a hand. "Try again." He tried again. He promised less. Still too much. "That's fine," I told him. "If you ever feel unsure, route it to legal." He nodded, grateful. He didn't know legal doesn't answer questions. Legal asks them. By Thursday, my boss started dropping by, pretending he cared about knowledge transfer. "How's Trent doing?" he asked, leaning in my doorway with a smile that wanted absolution. "He's learning," I said, which was true. He was learning the choreography, the steps, the lines, not the music. Trent loved the handbook version of my job. He loved anything that could be diagrammed. So I gave him diagrams. I gave him a beautiful escalation path that ended in the wrong place every time it mattered. I taught him that if procurement raised a concern, he should loop in the full distribution list immediately. That's what the policy said. What the policy didn't say was that procurement in a live renewal was like yelling fire in a theater because you saw a candle. I taught him that if the client asked for a small tweak, he should respond with, happy to accommodate, because clients love responsiveness, right? What I did not teach him was that small tweak is often a trapdoor to scope creep, and happy is a weakness you can invoice. I taught him that if he couldn't find an answer, he should be transparent. Honesty is valued. What I didn't teach him was when silence is strategy. He asked about my folder once, the one labeled appendix. What's in there, he said, casual. I didn't look up. Historical notes, I said. Oh, he said, already bored. So old stuff. Like old stuff, I repeated, and wrote something on my pad. Because appendix wasn't old stuff. Appendix was the living memory of every compromise that kept this machine upright. It was the list of names you never CC. It was the one number you call when the room starts to tilt. It was the difference between following process and surviving consequences. But Trent didn't want consequences. He wanted completion. Friday morning, he came in with a printed binder, tabs, labels, neat little bullet points. I think I've got it, he said, proud. Honestly, it's not that complicated. I looked at the binder. It was gorgeous. It was also empty in all the places that mattered. I tapped the cover with my pen. Good, I said. Then you'll be fine. Trent smiled, relieved. I smiled back, slow and calm. I showed him the map, not the weather. Monday morning after my last day was supposed to be quiet. It wasn't. At 6:12 a.m., my phone lit up with a number I didn't have saved. Then another, then another. 3 missed calls before I'd even tasted coffee. I watched them ring out like a metronome. Let them go to voicemail. Let the silence do what it does best. At 6:19, my email loaded. Subject line, urgent, client request. Then, recorder, urgent, client request. Then, FW first, urgent, client request. By 6:30, someone had added all stakeholders renewal to the thread, like lighting a match in a paper factory. Trent's name was on every message. He had replied at 6:05 a.m. with the kind of cheerful efficiency that should be illegal. Happy to accommodate, looping in the full team for visibility. A smiley face. In a 9-figure renewal. I inhaled once, slow, and sat down at my kitchen counter like I was about to watch a movie. The first voicemail was my boss, breathless. Kayla, hey, call me back as soon as you get this. We just need a quick clarification. Nothing major. Nothing major. He sounded like a man trying not to scream in front of his kids. Second voicemail. Legal. Kayla, this is Monica from Counsel. We need context on the client's request and the commitments made in writing. Commitments made in writing. That was the problem. Trent had made them. Third voicemail. The client's general counsel. No greeting, no warmth, just a question, delivered like a receipt. Who authorized these assurances? Assurances. Plural. I checked the email thread again. The client had asked for a small tweak to the service level language. Normal. Routine. The kind of thing that happens every renewal. Trent responded with accommodation and enthusiasm and, somehow, a guarantee. He wrote, "We can confirm execution by EOD Wednesday." Execution by EOD Wednesday. The renewal was scheduled for Friday. He had moved the deadline up by 2 days, like time was an Excel column you could drag down. And he had CC'd procurement. Procurement replied within 4 minutes, because procurement is a creature that senses blood. We'll need to reopen vendor review, they wrote. New SLA language triggers reassessment under Policy 7.2. Policy 7.2. The handbook loved Policy 7.2. Policy 7.2 is also how deals die politely. Then compliance chimed in. If SLA language changes, we require updated risk attestation. Please attach the completed compliance questionnaire. The questionnaire is 37 pages and asks questions no human can answer without weeping. Then finance. Execution by Wednesday impacts revenue recognition. Please confirm. Then someone from a regional office who had no business speaking wrote, "Great visibility, team." Visibility. Another soft word for disaster. At 7:04 a.m., a calendar invite popped up. Subject: Emergency Renewal War Room, 7:30 a.m. Location: Boardroom A. Agenda: TBD. TBD is corporate for "we're panicking." I didn't accept the invite. I didn't decline. I just watched it sit there, blinking like a flare. At 7:11, Trent emailed me directly. "Hey Kayla, quick question. Clients asking for Sterling-style language. Do we have a template? Also, procurement is asking why the SLA change triggers 7.2. Isn't that just standard?" Sterling-style language. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could have answered. I could have saved them. I could have told him that Sterling style wasn't a template. It was a temperature. It was a family that treated contracts like social rituals and punishments like hobbies. I could have told him procurement wasn't asking a question. They were planting a flag. I could have told him that the phrase "execution by Wednesday" was a promise the client would now use as a lever to squeeze concessions. But then I remembered Dana's smile, my boss's gentle voice. Cultural fit. I set my phone down. At 7:22, the missed calls started again, one after another, like hail. By 7:30, my boss sent a text that wasn't even pretending anymore. "Call me now." All caps, no punctuation. The corporate mask had slipped. At 7:34, a new email thread appeared, this one from legal. Subject line in bold urgency. Potential breach, need immediate response. When legal types breach, everyone else starts sweating through their clothes. I imagine the boardroom. Mahogany table, lemon polish, recirculated air. People leaning over laptops like they could type their way out of consequences. Trent sitting there with his binder, tabs crisp, eyes wide, trying to find the page labeled "When Everything is on Fire." He had the process. He had the checklist. He did not have the judgment. And the company, suddenly, felt the difference. At 8:02, an email from the client's counsel hit the thread. Short, clean, deadly. Given your team's written assurances and internal confusion, we are pausing execution pending clarity on authority and continuity. Pausing execution. A polite way to say, we don't trust you. That's when the internal emails stopped being careful and started being ugly. Who approved this? Why was procurement CC'd? Why is compliance involved? Where is Kayla? Can someone get Kayla? Like I was a fire extinguisher they'd thrown away and suddenly remembered. At 8:10, Trent finally called. When I didn't pick up, he left a voicemail, voice tight, the first crack in his confidence. Kayla, I think I messed something up. They're saying breach, and my boss is asking for a recap of everything. Can you just tell me what to say? Just tell me what to say. That's what he thought my job was. Words. Not the invisible architecture that keeps words from turning into lawsuits. I stood at my window and watched the city wake up like nothing was happening. Somewhere on floor 42, my boss was spiraling. Somewhere in the boardroom, the war room was filling. Somewhere, Trent was flipping through a binder, realizing the handbook doesn't have a chapter for panic. And in my quiet apartment, with my coffee finally hot, I understood something with a cold clarity. They didn't fire a person. They fired the nuance. The handbook was screaming. At 8:17 a.m., my boss finally stopped calling and started begging. His text came through in 2 short bursts. Please, we need you on the line. That's the funny thing about power. It's loud right up until it needs help. Then it turns into all caps and no dignity. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, moved slowly on purpose. At 8:23, I walked to my desk. Not the one in their office. Mine. The one at home, where the only thing humming was my laptop. I opened the printed release Dana had kindly provided. I read the severance clause again, like it might become less insulting if I stared harder. Then I turned it over and found my own handwriting from Friday. Friday, end of week, their deadline. I smiled, because they thought the deadline was for me. It wasn't. The real deadline was the one they didn't understand, the one written into a clause they'd never bothered to read past the title. Keyman. I opened a second folder on my computer. Not the process docs, not the templates. The other one. The one I never showed Trent. It was labeled Appendix. Inside were things no one trains you on. Not because they're secret, because they're human. Old email chains, quiet side agreements, notes from calls that ended with, "Off the record, Kayla." A scanned letter on heavy paper with a sterling crest embossed like a warning. A calendar invite from 3 years ago titled simply, "Lunch." And at the center of it all, a single thread I'd saved in a separate archive because I knew one day someone would ask me to prove reality. Subject line, continuity, Sterling renewal. From Marcus Sterling to Kayla. The first email was short, polite, dangerous. Kayla, as discussed, my family values consistency. For this renewal, I will only sign if you are the designated point of contact through execution. That was it. No emojis, no buzzwords, just a condition. A handshake in writing. I didn't reply with enthusiasm. I replied with precision. Understood. I will remain accountable for continuity and authority through close. Then, the follow-up from his counsel, months later, when procurement tried to get cute. Kayla is the continuity lead. Any deviation will be considered a material concern. Material concern. Legal language for, don't test us. I leaned back in my chair and listened to the silence in my apartment. They had fired the continuity lead. And now the client was pausing execution, pending clarity on authority. They were asking the question the clause answered. I checked my phone. Another text from my boss. Call in now. Client is on. No greeting, no mask, just panic. I let it sit for 10 more seconds, because 10 seconds is an eternity when a deal is bleeding. Then I tapped into the war room. The screen filled with faces. Boardroom A, fluorescent light. The mahogany table looking like it wanted to swallow them. My boss at the head, collar slightly open, eyes darting like prey. Dana from HR, inexplicably present, as if her cardigan could absorb liability. Legal, on mute, looking grim. Finance, whispering to someone off screen. Procurement, clutching policy like a rosary. And Trent. Trent looked like a boy who had been handed a steering wheel after the car had already started skidding. My boss forced a smile so hard it looked painful. Kayla, he said, too loudly. Thank you for joining. We're just working through some minor miscommunication. Minor. The client's general counsel didn't return the performance. Who is authorized to speak for your company, he asked, and who is responsible for continuity? My boss opened his mouth. Legal's eyes widened. Trent shifted in his chair. And then, because men like my boss can't stand silence, he did what he always did. He improvised. Trent is our new continuity lead, he said quickly, gesturing at Trent like he was presenting a product. Kayla has transitioned out, but she provided full documentation. We're covered. There it was, the lie, delivered with confidence. The client's counsel went still. Interesting, he said, because our condition for signing was explicit. My boss blinked. Condition? The client's counsel didn't look at Trent. He didn't look at Dana. He didn't even look at my boss. He looked at me. Kayla, he said, voice calm, do you still hold authority in this renewal? I watched my boss's face drain in real time. He mouthed my name like it was a prayer. I didn't rush. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I simply opened the email thread and shared my screen. Marcus Sterling's words appeared, black on white, clean and undeniable. Only sign if you are the designated point of contact through execution. The room didn't breathe. My boss stared at it like it was a weapon, because it was. Dana's smile finally died. Trent's binder sat on the table, useless, like a life jacket in a fire. My boss tried to speak, but nothing came out that wasn't panic. I looked into the camera, expression flat. You trained the role, I said softly. Then I let my eyes slide to my boss. I owned the trust. The email on my screen was quiet. Black text, white background. No exclamation points, no drama. The kind of proof that doesn't need to shout. In the boardroom, someone made a small sound, half inhale, half prayer. Dana's lips parted like she wanted to say something soothing and realized there wasn't a sentence in HR language for this. My boss stared at the shared screen like it was a mirror showing him who he actually was. That's old, he tried, voice cracking on the word. That's from, when was that? 3 years ago? We've evolved since then. Evolved. He said it like a Pokemon. The client's counsel didn't blink. It's in writing, he said, and it was reaffirmed in subsequent correspondence. Legal finally unmuted, because legal only speaks when the building is already on fire. That appears to be a condition precedent, Monica said carefully. If continuity is a condition, termination could be construed as... She stopped before she said breach, like the word might summon a lawsuit if spoken aloud. My boss's eyes snapped to her. No, he hissed. Let's not catastrophize. Catastrophize. From the man who CC'd all stakeholders at 6:30 a.m. On the far end of the table, procurement shuffled papers, suddenly fascinated by their own hands. Finance looked like someone had unplugged their soul. Trent sat very still, binder open, pen poised, waiting for a bullet point that would save him. There wasn't one. The client's counsel leaned forward slightly. His voice stayed polite. Polite is how powerful people hold a knife. We are prepared to move forward, he said, if the conditions we agreed to are honored. My boss latched on to the word move like it was oxygen. Yes, he said quickly. Absolutely. We're aligned. We can honor. He turned toward Trent, because men like him always outsource the part where they have to be competent. Trent, he said, too bright, tell them how we're ensuring continuity. Trent blinked. Once. Twice. He looked down at his binder as if the right tab might glow. He cleared his throat. Yeah, so, he began, forcing confidence into his voice like it was a suit that didn't fit. We have documented the full process and the workflows. We have escalation paths. We have standardized communications. We're essentially redundancy-proof. Redundancy-proof. That phrase sounded good in a meeting and meant nothing in a contract. The client's counsel tilted his head. Redundancy of what? He asked. Trent smiled, relieved. A question. He could answer questions. Of the role, Trent said. The continuity lead role. I'm stepping in. Kayla provided comprehensive documentation. We're covered. He said covered again. My boss nodded along, grateful. Dana's eyes flicked to me, then away, like she couldn't bear to look at the person she'd just tried to erase. The client's counsel didn't move. Not a nod, not a smile. Kayla, he said, and the whole room snapped to attention. Did you transfer authority to Mr. Trent? Authority. Not process, not templates. Authority. My boss's jaw tightened. Trent's pen hovered above paper like a needle over a record, stuck. I watched my boss's face in the tiny square on my screen. He was silently begging me to lie, to smooth it, to make it go away, to be the professional woman he could exploit one last time. I didn't owe him comfort. I owed myself truth. I did not, I said. 2 words. No adjectives, no rage, just fact. The silence afterward was surgical. Trent swallowed. But, he started, then stopped, because he could feel the floor under him shifting. My boss jumped in, hands up. Kayla, we're not asking you to... This is just semantics. We're talking about continuity in the general sense. Semantics. He always loved that word when he was wrong. The client's counsel looked at him like he was something that had wandered into the room by accident. It is not semantics, he said evenly. Your company agreed to a specific point of contact through execution. You terminated that point of contact. Then your team made written assurances without authority. That is a problem. Problem. The cleanest insult. My boss tried to recover, voice rising, scrambling for control. We can fix this, he said. We can reinstate temporarily. Kayla can consult. He was building a bridge out of spit. And then, because he was panicking, he did the one thing I knew he would do. He blamed the wrong person. This happened because Trent wasn't given enough support, he said, gesturing at Trent. He followed the procedures he was taught. If anyone failed here, it's... He paused, eyes flicking to my square on the screen. It's because Kayla didn't fully disclose the client nuances. There it was, the confession, in front of legal, in front of HR, in front of the client. He had just admitted they fired me, demanded I train my replacement, and then expected me to carry secret conditions that weren't in any handbook. Monica from legal went pale. Dana's hands tightened around her pen. Trent looked at my boss like a puppy realizing its owner will kick it. The client's counsel didn't even bother to hide his contempt. You required her to train her replacement, he said, slow and precise. And you're now admitting you relied on undocumented nuances for deal execution? My boss opened his mouth. Nothing came out that didn't make it worse. The room was watching him die in real time, not with blood, but with credibility. I stayed quiet. Because when someone is dismantling themselves, correcting them is mercy. I didn't correct him. The call ended the way most expensive disasters end. Quietly. No shouting, no slam doors. Just the soft click of a client who has decided you are not worth the risk. The last thing the client's counsel said was, "We'll follow up in writing." That sentence is the corporate version of a toe tag. The boardroom stayed frozen for a second after the screen went black, like they were waiting for someone to rewind and fix it. Then the sound came back in layers. A chair scraping, a pen dropping, someone whispering, "Oh my God," like God was the one who wrote the email. My boss turned toward the camera again, eyes glassy, voice suddenly gentle. "Kayla," he said, "we need to talk offline." Offline. Translation? Can you save me without witnesses? I held my expression the way I held deals. Steady, neutral, unbuyable. What would you like to discuss? I asked. He swallowed. We can work something out, he said quickly. We may have moved too fast. We value you, obviously. There were misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. Like he hadn't sat in a room with HR and called my career cultural fit. Dana reappeared on screen, her cardigan suddenly useless armor. Kayla, she said softly, I'm so sorry this escalated. Escalated, as if I had thrown the grenade. As if I hadn't just held up the pin they handed me. Legal unmuted again, voice tight. We need to know what you have, Monica said. Any other correspondence, any side letters, any conditions. What you have, not what you know. They still didn't understand. Trent didn't speak. He just stared down at his binder like he was hoping the paper would open up and swallow him. My boss tried one more time, switching tactics the way he always did when he smelled his own blood. Kayla, he said, leaning closer to the camera, be reasonable. We're a team. You can't just walk away. Team. He said it like it wasn't a word he used only when he needed free labor. I tilted my head. "I didn't walk away," I said. "You terminated me." His face tightened. He hated facts. The call ended soon after. Legal wanted documents. HR wanted a path forward. My boss wanted silence. Trent wanted a time machine. I closed my laptop. And because I am petty in the most practical way, I did something small. I opened my closet and pulled out the blazer I wore when I closed my first renewal alone. Charcoal, clean lines, pearl buttons, armor. I slipped it on, not because I needed protection, but because I liked the ritual of putting myself back together. Then I went outside. The city smelled like cold air and car exhaust and freedom. No lemon polish, no recycled fear. By noon, the text started. From my boss. "Can you jump on a quick call? We can discuss a consulting arrangement." Consulting, of course. Pay a woman hourly for what they refuse to value salaried. From Dana. "Hi, Kayla. Hope you're okay. We'd love to explore reinstatement options." Reinstatement. Like I was a desk plant they could move back to the window. From Trent at 12:41. "I'm really sorry. I didn't know. They told me you were leaving voluntarily." Voluntarily. That lie had legs. At 1:05, my boss finally sent a number. "We can offer you a retention bonus to support continuity through execution. $7,500. $7,500 for a 9-figure renewal. For the trust of a client who had just watched him confess incompetence live on a call. I stared at the number long enough to feel the absurdity settle in my bones. Then I did what I always do when someone tries to buy me cheap. I smiled. I replied with one word. No. And because I'm not cruel, just precise, I added one sentence after a full minute of silence. Please route future communication through counsel. The rest of the afternoon was the aftershock. Emails leaked into my old team like smoke. People whispering about what happened. Rumors about the client shopping the renewal. Someone posted a vague LinkedIn update about learning moments. By 4:30, a junior analyst I liked texted me, quietly. They cut Trent out of the thread. "They're having a war room again. Your boss looks sick." I imagined the boardroom, the mahogany table, the lemon polish trying to cover panic. I imagined my old desk, my keyboard, the controlled chaos that used to be mine. And I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not anger. Relief. Because when the smoke clears, you see what matters. They wanted the process. They got the process. What they didn't get back was me. Revenge with Kayla. People love to ask if I won, like this was a boxing match. Like there's a bell, a referee, and a clean ending where the villain admits they were wrong and hands you your job back with a bouquet. Corporate revenge doesn't work like that. Corporate revenge is quieter. It's watching someone who dismissed you as replaceable learn, in public, that they fired the wrong thing. They didn't lose because I screamed. I didn't even raise my voice. They lost because they believed a process was the same as a person. They believed training could replace trust. They believed a handbook could hold nuance. And here's the part nobody tells you when you're sitting in your car after work, staring at the steering wheel, wondering if you're crazy for being this tired. Most companies don't promote competence. They promote comfort. They promote people who make meetings feel easy, even when the work is hard. They promote the ones who can smile while they cut you, until the day the smile costs them money. That's when they remember your name. My boss tried to buy me back for $7,500, like I was a subscription he forgot to cancel. HR tried to explore reinstatement options, like I was a chair they could move back under a desk. Trent texted me an apology that was almost sincere. Almost. None of it mattered. Because once you've watched someone throw you away and then demand you save them, you realize something clean and permanent. If they can replace you, let them. Just don't confuse replace with replicate. I still think about that boardroom sometimes. The lemon polish, the recycled air, the mahogany table pretending to be calm. The way my boss's voice changed when the client stopped trusting him. The way Dana's smile finally ran out of stitches. The way Trent's binder sat there, open, like a prayer book in the wrong religion. And the way I didn't have to do anything dramatic. I just told the truth. Then I went and lived my life. So if you've ever been asked to train your replacement, if you've ever been transitioned out with a corporate smile and a calendar invite, just know this. You don't owe anyone your weather. You can show them the map. And if you like watching train wrecks in slow motion, if you like stories where the handbook tries to scream and the wrong people finally hear it, go ahead and hit subscribe. Or don't. Either way, I'll still be here, buttoned up, unbothered, and very hard to replace.